A golden-coated eye from Iran's burnt city. A clay cylinder, some say, was the first bill of human rights. And a Chinese star map drawn long before telescopes existed. Finds like these don't just add to history, they rewrite it. But before we crack them open, make sure to hit like, subscribe for more, and get ready to be amazed. Because I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 ancient Asian artifacts that'll make you rethink history. 25. The world's oldest fake eye. Today's artificial eyes come with permanent implants and custom-fitted acrylics. I mean, heck, I even covered one that comes with its own AI the other day, but they go way back. As in, way back. The oldest one we've ever found was over 4,800 years old. 4,800. It was discovered in Shahrazad, Iran, also known as the Burnt City, in 2006 inside a woman's grave, and was made of a mixture of tar and animal fat. The surface was covered in a thin sheet of gold and etched with fine lines to look like an iris. Tiny holes on the sides showed it had been strapped into place with cord. She turned out to be a woman who died in her mid-20s to early 30s, and for that era, she was unusually tall, close to 1.8 meters. Archaeologists picked up on signs of infection and irritation in her skull, which suggests that she wore it for a long time, and that it might have even ultimately led to her death. 24. The world's first cartoon. Before we had TikTok, Disney, even before we had paper, people were already trying to make pictures move. The same site that gave us the world's oldest fake eye also gave us a little clay goblet that's about 5,000 years old. At first glance, it looks just like a very old cup. It's got a goat with big horns painted around it 5 times in sequence. First standing, then leaping, then stretching higher, until finally it reaches the leaves of a tree. All very bland. Until you start spinning it. Then those images blur together, and it actually looks as if the goat is jumping. The goblet measures about 10 centimeters or 4 inches tall, and can be found in the National Museum of Iran. 23. The first dental work. If you thought dentistry was a Greek invention, well, I've got news for you. The oldest proof of dental work comes from Meghar, a Neolithic settlement in present-day Pakistan. There, archaeologists uncovered human teeth that had already been drilled sometime between 7,000 and 5,500 BCE. The holes were neat and circular, showing that someone used a flint-tip drill, probably powered by a bowstring. In some cases, the teeth even had concentric rings from the tool, like grooves cut into the enamel. We think that they likely packed the holes with bitumen, a sticky tar that worked as a filler, and may have numbed the pain a little. They have found 11 molars with drill holes in total, all from adult burials. 22. China's 3,000-year-old fortune-telling bones. When it comes to oracles, our minds usually jump straight to Greece. The thing is, Delphi's oracle wasn't active until about 1000 BCE. China had already been writing down its own divination centuries earlier, and by 1200 BCE they left us one of the largest written archives. The so-called oracle bones were discovered in 1899 and were made of turtle shell and ox shoulder blades. The Chiang Dynasty diviners would carve questions into them. Things like, will the harvest be good? Or, will the king's army win? Then heat the bone until cracks appeared. The crack patterns were read as the answer, which was then carved right back onto the same bone. So far, more than 13,000 of these oracle bones have been found, with over 130,000 inscriptions, making them the oldest significant body of Chinese writing still in existence. 21. The oldest surviving map of the stars. Over 1,300 years ago, someone in China sat down and mapped the entire night sky. That map, known as the Dunhuang Star Atlas, was discovered in the Mogao Caves and is the oldest complete star chart still in existence. The atlas shows over 1,000 stars carefully grouped into 257 constellations that line up with Chinese constellations and include notes on planetary movements and lunar phases. That means it worked both as a calendar and a guide for rituals, navigation, and imperial planning. What makes it amazing is its accuracy. Modern astronomers tested the atlas against today's sky maps and found the star positions a lot more accurate than they expected. Today, it's considered one of the most valuable astronomical artifacts in existence. 20. The oldest record of Christianity in China. Found in Xi'an and carved back in 781, the Nestorian Stele is a limestone tablet that runs nearly 9 feet tall. What makes it stand out is the text, written in both Chinese and Syriac, that documents how Christianity had already spread deep into China during the Tang Dynasty. The inscription tells how missionaries from Daqin, the name used for the Byzantine Empire, first arrived in 635. The Tang Emperor welcomed them, gave permission to build monasteries, and even issued decrees recognizing their practices. The stele was buried after 845 during a wave of anti-foreign religious policies in Tang China, and remained underground until its rediscovery in 1625. It is the earliest physical evidence that Christianity was practiced in China over a millennium before the Jesuits appeared. 19. A 3,000-year-old mystery civilization. In 1986, Sichuan workers were digging in Sanxi Dui when they found 2 massive pits stuffed with Bronze Age treasures. Their finds included enormous bronze heads, a life-size bronze figure that stood over 8 feet tall, a bronze tree sculpture, golden masks, and piles of ivory. The bronzes were completely different from those of the Chiang Dynasty in central China, and they pointed to a culture previously unknown, now believed to be the Shu Kingdom in southwest China. Archaeologists eventually cataloged over 1,000 artifacts from the pits, many of them deliberately broken and burned before burial. They were still pulling treasures out in 2021, including bronze pieces, silk, and jade. 18. India's 4,400-year-old dockyard. When most of the world was still figuring out farming, the Indus Valley people were already building a dockyard big enough to berth ocean-going ships. Measuring 218 by 37 meters, it was built of kiln-baked bricks and included sluice gates, spillways, and a lock system to regulate tidal flows. The basin is connected to an ancient river that once flowed into the Gulf of Kambat, giving ships direct access to maritime trade routes. From here, the Harappans could move beads, cotton, ivory, and semi-precious stones out toward the Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia. The engineering was clever too. The dock was designed to rise and fall with the tides, so it kept the vessels safe even when water levels moved. Archaeologists also uncovered warehouse foundations next to the dock, where goods like beads, gems, and cotton textiles were stockpiled before being shipped out. 17. The Han Dynasty's earthquake detector. In 132, a Han Dynasty scholar named Shang Hang built what would become the world's first seismoscope. It looked like a massive wine vessel decorated with dragons and toads. Each dragon held a bronze ball in its mouth, and inside, a hidden pendulum waited for the ground to shake. When seismic waves arrived, the pendulum shifted just enough to trigger one dragon, releasing its ball into the open mouth of a toad. That sound told observers not only that an earthquake had struck, but in which direction. According to official records, the machine once sensed a quake hundreds of kilometers away, long before the news reached the court. Engineers have tried to rebuild it, but none of the copies have managed to perform as well as the version described almost 2,000 years ago. 16. The oldest Turkic writing. When Russian explorers made it to Mongolia's Orkhon Valley in the 1890s, they ran into giant stone monuments carved all over with strange runic-looking symbols. These turned out to be the Orkhon inscriptions, created in 732 for Turkic rulers like Bilge Khan and his brother Kultigin. They brag about victories, warn against division, and hammer home the pride of the steppe tribes standing up to Chinese power. The find was incredible, since most historians believe that the nomadic cultures had left nothing in writing. To make it even better, the stele carried Chinese translations along the Old Turkic script, which is why scholars started calling them the Rosetta Stone of the Turkic script. The biggest of these slabs rise more than 10 feet high and is packed with over 2,800 carved characters running in vertical columns. The stelae were all placed along the Orkhon River, which used to be the political heartland of the Göktürkler. 15. The earliest use of the number 0. The concept of 0 wasn't born overnight, but the first time it shows up as a written number comes from a set of birch bark manuscripts found in Bakhshali, Pakistan. Discovered in 1881, the collection includes around 70 sheets written in Sanskrit, filled with arithmetic exercises, all showing the presence of a small dot, the earliest known symbol for 0, used as a placeholder in calculations. As these things go, though, experts could not decide on the age of the manuscript. Then, finally, in 2017, radiocarbon testing revealed that some of the pages dated as far back as the 3rd or 4th century, while others were written several centuries later. That places the Bakhshali manuscript hundreds of years ahead of other recorded zeros, like those in 9th century temple inscriptions from India. 14. Bantiang prehistoric metal finds. The Bantiang UNESCO site in northeast Thailand, uncovered in 1966, is a massive mound that was created by generations of habitation stretching back to 1500 BCE. The excavations here have revealed graves filled with bronze tools, ornaments, and ceramic vessels, as well as habitation layers showing evidence of smelting. Yes, smelting. Radiocarbon and thermoluminescence testing placed the earliest metalworking at Bantiang in the 2nd millennium BCE, with iron production beginning by about 1000 BCE. Before this discovery, everyone thought that metallurgy spread into the region much later, from China or India. Instead, Bantiang showed us that the local communities in the area were mastering metalwork on their own. The finds not only included the finished tools, but also crucibles, slag, and other casting evidence, which gave us a clear picture of their entire process. 13. A sword that stayed rust-free for 2,000 years. In 1956, archaeologists opened a tomb in Hubei province in China and pulled out a sword that looked like it had just left the forge. Despite being buried for more than 2,000 years, the blade was spotless, with no traces of rust. One archaeologist even nicked his finger testing the edge, proving that it was still razor sharp. Inscriptions on the hilt identified it as the sword of King Gojian of Yue, a monarch from the 5th century BCE. Metallurgical analysis later revealed why the sword survived. The bronze alloy contained deliberate amounts of tin and other elements that made it resistant to corrosion. It was also treated with rust-proofing chemicals, and the scabbard turned out to be almost 100% airtight, sealing the blade away from moisture. The result was a sword in pristine condition, preserved perfectly across 2 millennia. 12. Royal jade suits sewn together with gold. When archaeologists opened the tomb of Prince Liu Chiang and Princess Da Wan in 1968, they found 2 of the most remarkable burial garments in history. Both their bodies were wrapped in jade burial suits. Each suit used more than 2,000 tiny jade plaques cut to fit the contours of the body and was stitched together with gold wire. Tailored in 12 sections, the armor-like suits were meant to keep the souls of the deceased intact, a belief rooted in Han ideas of the afterlife. The tombs themselves, hidden in Lingshan outside Manchang, had been sealed for 2 millennia. They were also filled with painted ceramics, bronze vessels, luxury objects, and chariots buried with their horses. Unlike most royal tombs, these chambers had never been looted, so the prince and princess were discovered exactly as they were left in the 2nd century BCE. 11. Thousands of terracotta warriors. If you made it this far, I know you're just itching for me to mention this one. In 1974, farmers digging a well near Xi'an, China, pulled up bits of clay that turned out to be part of a life-size soldier. That broken statue was the first glimpse of Qin Shi Huang's underground army, now called the Terracotta Warriors. Archaeologists have since uncovered around 7,000 figures, each carved with unique features, lined up in battle formation. The soldiers aren't alone. Horses, bronze chariots, acrobats, musicians, and even waterfowl crafted from bronze have been found across the complex. The site itself is huge, about 22 square miles with over 600 pits. 3 of the largest are open inside the Emperor Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum Site Museum. The Emperor's actual tomb mound, said to contain rivers of mercury, has never been opened. So far, just 2,000 warriors have been fully excavated, but even that number makes this one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century. 10. Roman currency in medieval Japan. Katsuren Castle in Okinawa is a 12th century fortress, but in 2016, it coughed up something far older: Roman coins dating back to the 4th century. Archaeologists trace the coins back to some of the late Roman emperors, including Constantine the Great and Valentinian I, so they were minted over 1500 years before Katsuren Castle was even built. Now, before these coins turned up, there wasn't a shred of evidence linking Rome and Japan, so the find left archaeologists scratching their heads. The only conclusion they could come to was that the coins must have traveled east through traders long after they were minted, ending up in Okinawa centuries later. Are they right? Who knows? Katsuren Castle was known for its overseas links, and the coins may have been treasured keepsakes or collected curiosities by the time they arrived. 9. The world's oldest carpet. The Prehistoric carpet doesn't look like something that should have survived for 2400 years, but it was perfectly preserved inside a Scythian burial mound until its discovery in 1949. Dating to the 5th to 3rd century BCE, it's the oldest surviving pile carpet in the world. You'll actually find that in the Guinness World Records if you feel like Googling it. The piece is about 6 by 6.5 feet long, woven from dyed wool, and is more than 1.1 million knots in total. Its decorations are so detailed and intricate, in deep reds and golds, that experts believe it must have originated in Persia, where advanced carpet weaving was already known. What saved it was actually pure chance. Ancient looters broke into the tomb, which allowed water to seep in. It later froze solid and turned the grave into a natural freezer. 8. The Begram Hoard. In the 30s, French archaeologists opened 2 sealed rooms while digging in Begram, Afghanistan, and found a stash, and I mean stash, of luxury goods dating back to the 1st and 2nd century CE. Inside were Roman glass cups and bowls, Egyptian and Syrian platters, carved Indian ivory statuettes, Chinese lacquer boxes, and bronze ornaments from Central Asia. The mix was incredible. Dozens of luxury items from across 3 continents, all resting together in one city. Most scholars believe it was a royal cache, either tribute or goods meant for trade, stored away and never recovered. 7. The Guanyindong cave tools. The Guanyindong cave tools are famous not just because they're old, but because of how they were made. Instead of simply banging rocks together, whoever lived in this cave around 130,000 years ago used what's called the levallois technique. That means they shaped a stone core carefully, like prepping a mold, and then struck off flakes that were already pre-sized and ready for cutting or scraping. This method was considered a hallmark of Middle Paleolithic Africa and Europe, but the finds in Guizhou, China proved it was happening in East Asia too. Radiometric tests dated the tools to somewhere between 80 and 170,000 years ago, making them the earliest known examples of this kind in the region. They could have been made by the Denisovans or Homo sapiens, but be that as it may, the discovery shows that advanced tool technology wasn't confined to one corner of the world. 6. The world's first Bill of Human Rights. Have you ever heard of Cyrus the Great? In 1879, archaeologists discovered a broken clay cylinder covered in Akkadian cuneiform in Babylon. It turned out to be a royal proclamation from Cyrus himself, written after he conquered the city in 539 BCE. The text describes how Cyrus entered Babylon without bloodshed, ordered local temples restored, and allowed displaced peoples, including the Jews exiled by earlier kings, to return to their homelands. Modern historians slapped it with the nickname the world's first Bill of Rights. But for Cyrus, it was more of a political statement to legitimize his rule. The cylinder is about 9 inches long, written in the Babylonian script of the time, and was presumably buried in the foundations of the city walls as an official record. 5. The first long-distance spice trade. Cloves don't grow in the Middle East. They don't grow in India either. The only place they come from is the Maluku Islands of Indonesia. So, how did a handful of them end up inside a ruined house in Turkic, Syria almost 3,700 years ago? Archaeologists found the charred buds during excavations in the late 70s, and dating put them at about 1720 BCE. That single discovery rewrote what we knew about ancient trade. Instead of Rome's spice routes being the starting point, merchants were clearly hauling goods thousands of miles much earlier. The journey would have carried them from Southeast Asia to India through Persia and into Mesopotamia before reaching Syria. So they were probably elite imports meant for ritual or luxury use. 4. The shipwreck that proved the Maritime Silk Road. By the 9th century, the Silk Road wasn't only running across deserts, it also stretched across the oceans. If you need proof, look no further than the Belitung shipwreck discovered in Indonesian waters in 1998. The vessel itself had been built in the Persian Gulf using sewn plank construction, a technique unique to the region. Packed into its hold were between 60,000 to 70,000 Chinese ceramics from the Chiang Dynasty, along with ornate gold and silver pieces clearly tailored for West Asian buyers. The cargo was massive. In fact, it was the largest Tang cache ever recovered, and was, in all likelihood, headed back to the Abbasid Caliphate after a successful trading mission to China. Instead, the ship sank off Indonesia, where it lay untouched for over 1,100 years. 3. The Indus seal we still can't read. Archaeologists digging in the Indus Valley have turned up thousands of small square seals, but none of them is more famous than the so-called unicorn seal. Now that image of a unicorn that just jumped into your head? Yeah, it doesn't look like that. It's more like a longhorn bull drawn in profile. Over half of the Indus seals discovered so far have that same horned animal, and yet the script carved above is still unreadable. Despite decades of attempts, no one has managed to crack the Indus writing system, which means we don't actually know if these seals recorded names, prayers, or inventory labels. What we do know is that the seals were carved from steatite and used like stamps. They've been found across Harappan cities and even at Mesopotamian sites, showing just how far Indus trade networks spread. 2. Ancient Vietnam's giant bronze drums. The ancient Vietnamese's bronze casting probably couldn't get any more ambitious than what they did with the Dong Song drums. The largest examples were almost a meter high, weighed over 200 pounds, and were poured in single casts. The oldest ones go back to 600 BCE, and what makes them pop isn't just their size. The drums were decorated with sunbursts, birds, warriors, rice farming, and even boats full of rowers. It's believed that the drums were used in rituals, harvest festivals, and leadership ceremonies. The sound carried far, so they might have also been used to gather people or to send signals. Nearly identical drums have been dug up across Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, southern China, and even as far as Indonesia. So, just like the Greeks and the Phoenicians, the Dong Song culture was plugged into a wide trade and influence network 2,500 years ago. 1. The world's largest collection of Buddhas. The Longmen Grottos are one of China's greatest archaeological sites. Cliffside packed with Buddhist art that was created over the course of 400 years. After the northern Wei dynasty moved its capital to Luoyang in the late 5th century, thousands of workers and artisans began carving the art straight into the cliffs. Emperors, monks, and wealthy families all funded new caves and statues, ending with more than 1,400 individual grottos filled with about 100,000 Buddhist figures, from thumb-sized icons to the 55-foot Vairocana Buddha commissioned by Empress Wu Zetian in the 7th century. There are also more than 3,600 inscriptions and steles, which documented some of the donations, teachings, and imperial decrees. By the time the Tang dynasty fell in the 10th century, new carvings had stopped, and the caves were left as they stand today. And that's it for today. But before you go, let's see if you caught this one. Those giant bronze heads and gold masks they found at Sanxingdui were linked to which lost kingdom? Was it the A, Shang, B, Shu, C, Han, or D, Xia? Drop your answers in the comments below. And while you're there, tell me which artifact from today's list you'd really want to see in person. And if this list was everything you expected, and more, wait until you see our related video, 25 ancient artifacts that prove the past was more advanced. You'll get a pillar that stayed rust-free for 1,600 years, a bronze star map that predates most written history, and machines so advanced, they look modern. The link's coming up right here any second. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Gonna go do more digging. Let's find ancient stuff in Florida.